Graduates, family members, friends, and distinguished guests, please take your seats. The 2019 Spring Commencement Ceremony will begin shortly. Graduates, family members, friends, and distinguished guests, please rise for the 2019 Spring Commencement Academic Processional. Please remain standing for the singing of our national anthem, performed by Doctor of Musical Arts, Voice and Opera, Class of 2019 degree candidate, Wesley Dunnigan.
Welcome to the University of Wisconsin-Madison's spring commencement ceremony for doctoral, medical professional, MFA, and honorary degree candidates. Please join me in a round of applause to honor and congratulate all of our graduates. In the audience are spouses, children, parents, siblings, and many good friends. Thanks to all of you for all that you've done to support our graduates tonight and make it possible for them to be here. I'd like to ask our graduates to rise as they are able and applaud tonight's audience for all of their support. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce you to members of our official party. I'm going to ask each of them to stand up when their name is called and to remain standing. And I'll ask the audience to please hold your applause until all members of the party have been introduced. Rebecca Blank, Chancellor. John Bailing, President of the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents. Thomas Brock, Honorary Degree Candidate. Thomas Givnish, Professor of Botany and Environmental Studies. Carl Schultz, Dean of the College of Letters and Science. Robert Golden, Dean of the School of Medicine and Public Health. Diana Hess, Dean of the School of Education. Stephen Swanson, Dean of the School of Pharmacy. Ian Robertson, Dean of the College of Engineering. Catherine Vanden Bosch, Dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. James Johannes, Senior Associate Dean for Faculty and Research, Wisconsin School of Business. Norman Drinkwater, Interim Vice Chancellor for Research and Graduate Education. Raymond Tafora, Vice Chancellor for Legal Affairs. Leanne Tigas, Professor, Community and Environmental Sociology and Chair of the Committee on Honorary Degrees. Stephen Miller, Honorary Degree Candidate. Susan Cook, Professor and Director of the Mead-Witter School of Music. Cora Merritt, our alumna speaker. William Karpus, Dean of the Graduate School. Linda Scott, Dean of the School of Nursing. Mark Markell, Dean of the School of Veterinary Medicine. Soyen Shim, Dean of the School of Human Ecology. Margaret Raymond, Dean of the Law School. Charles Haslett, Vice Chancellor for University Relations. Lauren Heller, Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration. Argyle Wade, Interim Dean of Students. Sarah Shute, Executive Director of the Wisconsin Alumni Association. Jeffrey Russell, Vice Provost for Lifelong Learning and Dean of Continuing Studies. Carl Martin, Dean of Extension. Paul Zedler, Professor and Associate Director of the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies. Richard Keller, Associate Dean of the International Division. John Ballacchino, Director of the Division of Arts. Scott Avchatik, Registrar. Steve Smith, Secretary of the Faculty. Barbara Bowers, Professor of Nursing and member of the University Committee of the Faculty Senate. Please join me in welcoming these distinguished individuals. I would now like to introduce Rebecca Blank, Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Last summer, Chancellor Blank celebrated her 5th anniversary leading this great university. She is an internationally respected economist who has also spent time in Washington, D.C., working in 3 different administrations. Most recently, she was Deputy Secretary and Acting Secretary of the U.S. Department of Commerce under President Obama prior to her selection to lead our university in 2013. Chancellor Blank received her undergraduate degree in economics from the University of Minnesota and holds a doctoral degree in economics from MIT. She has served on the faculty at Princeton, Northwestern, and the University of Michigan, where she also served as Dean of the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy. As Chancellor, she has committed herself to maintaining the university's position as one of the world's top centers for discovery and research, educating students to compete in a global economy, and helping UW experts to share knowledge and innovation with the state, the nation, and the world, what we call the Wisconsin idea. Please welcome Chancellor Rebecca Blank.
Good evening, everyone. I am delighted to welcome you to the University of Wisconsin-Madison Spring Commencement Ceremony for doctoral, MFA, and professional degree candidates. And thank you to Provost Sarah Mangelsdorf for opening tonight's ceremony, and thank you for her valuable contributions to this university over the last 5 years. Some of you know that Sarah is leaving to take the position of the president of the University of Rochester. She's made an outstanding contribution to this campus, and we wish her all the best in her next adventure. Thank you, Sarah. I want to add my congratulations to all of our graduates, and thanks to the many proud parents and spouses, children, siblings, and friends who are here tonight who have helped make this moment possible. And I know for some of you, there are friends, colleagues, family members who are with you on this journey but who cannot be here tonight, and we remember all of them as well. 2019 is an historic year, both for you and for the University of Wisconsin. For you, it marks the end of a long and sustained effort to earn the credentials to work at the highest levels in your field. For the university, 2019 is the 150th anniversary of the graduation of the first women at the University of Wisconsin. It deserves a round of applause. The year was 1869, and there were just 6 young women in that first graduating class. We honor them for their individual achievements, but also as trailblazers for generations of UW women who followed. Professor Emerita Cora Merritt is one of our extraordinary alumna, and she will share her story in just a few minutes. I want to tell you about one other. Sister Mary Kenneth Keller was a Roman Catholic nun who in 1965 became the first person in the United States to earn a PhD in computer science, right here at UW-Madison. Sister Mary Kenneth made history, not only because she earned a credential before anyone else, but because of her dedication to 2 important principles, the same principles that have shaped much of your work here at UW. The first was that academics should share knowledge and innovation with the public. That's the Wisconsin idea. She helped develop the computer language called BASIC, which for the first time made it possible for anyone to write custom software. You no longer had to be a scientist with access to special tools. The second principle was that collaboration between academic disciplines is the best way to solve problems. Her experience working across disciplines here at UW led her to give a talk in the 1970s, which she made what was then quite a radical prediction that, quote, computers would be the greatest interdisciplinary tool ever invented. This campus and its research centers have been carefully designed to encourage interdisciplinary conversation and collaboration of the sort that Sister Mary Kenneth was involved in. We know that those collaborations lead to some of the most interesting and important work that happens here. That's why we have engineers working with clothing designers, infectious disease specialists working with bacteriologists who study leafcutter ants. One of our new PhD students in freshwater and marine sciences came back after interviewing at a couple of other top universities and said, and I quote, "Every university I've visited had great faculty, students, good facilities, but UW was the only place where the water scientists work across the whole campus. Engineers, political scientists, people from global health, the Energy Institute, they're all involved. That's what makes this place exciting." To which evidently when he said this while he was out visiting, a faculty member from another university said, "Oh yeah, that's a real Wisconsin thing." We are so accustomed to working across boundaries here at UW that we do it often seemingly without effort. But the fact is, these collaborations don't happen spontaneously. They happen because we've created the right conditions and the right spaces to bring people together and to encourage interaction. As you leave this place, you're going to find that it's likely going to take more time and effort to connect with people from different worlds. But it's also one of the most important things you can do as you begin this next chapter in your lives, because those connections are going to nourish 2 of the building blocks for a happy, productive life and career. The first building block, intellectual curiosity, the foundation on which you, I hope, have completed your graduate work. The way to stay curious is to be around people who do interesting things, people who will ask you questions you've never thought of before and which can take your career in new directions. People who will inspire you to think of a whole new research project, learn how to play the cello, cook Thai food, or figure out what Game of Thrones is actually all about. You've all been those people for each other. You've kept one another inspired and engaged, even at moments when you wondered whether the work was worth it. And the results have been extraordinary. Jeanette Metzger mapped areas of the heart where the earliest changes associated with Parkinson's disease can be found, something no one had ever done before. Jeanette's preclinical work may pave the way for much earlier diagnosis and treatment of Parkinson's. Today, she receives a PhD in cellular and molecular pathology. Congratulations, Jeanette. Andrew Voter set out to demonstrate how enzymes alter unusual DNA structures inside cells and found something entirely unexpected. Andy's work is leading to a new understanding of how cells duplicate their DNA and an entirely new research direction for the lab. As his advisor, Dr. Jim Keck, says put it, it was like opening the door to a bedroom, expecting to find a bed, and instead finding King Tut's tomb. Today, Andy will receive a PhD in biochemistry, and he will return to medical school this summer to complete his MD. Congratulations, Andy. For Jamila Lee Johnson, there were many moments of discovery in her years of research on the factors that affect college access and retention for students of color. Among other things, she vowed that she will continue to fight for Black women throughout their transitions from high school to college to graduate school. Today, Jamila will receive a PhD in educational leadership and policy analysis. Congratulations, Jamila. I could keep going for every single student sitting in the auditorium tonight, but I won't. Even as we celebrate big achievements, we know these moments of discovery are accompanied by a lot of other moments of exhaustion and frustration. Moments when the only thing you're curious about is why you ever thought this was a good idea in the first place. Those are the moments when you need to find activities that take you outside of work. When Albert Einstein came upon a problem that stumped him, he'd walk away and play the violin. Isaac Newton and Carl Sagan would pick up their pens and write. Beatrix Potter created Peter Rabbit as an outlet for the frustrations she encountered as a botanist. So put yourself in places where you can learn new things from people with lots of different interests, and stay connected to your fellow students, your colleagues for life. They will always laugh and cry with you, and they will be there to celebrate the victories, large and small, no matter how many years go by. The second building block, in addition to intellectual curiosity, is developing your ability to communicate. Connecting with people from many different backgrounds and perspectives is an excellent way to sharpen your communication skills. The surgeon and author Atul Gawande writes about his struggle to deliver bad news to patients. He tried giving a lot of medical facts, which left them deeply upset. He tried giving less information, which left them confused. And ultimately, he realized the best way to start difficult conversations was with simple words. I am worried. Words matter, particularly when they're coming from a person recognized as an expert in their field. We live in an era that is sometimes skeptical of scientific knowledge, but urgently in need of solutions for really hard problems. We live in an era that is sometimes skeptical of facts, but urgently in need of reason. The credential that you receive today will open up new opportunities for you to have conversations with the public, the media, industry leaders, policymakers, and others about important areas where you know more than anyone else. But the classic academic approach to communication, throw out all those facts and figures in a very complex way and hope your audience figures it out. That may work well in the seminars in your field, but it's not very effective for public communication. As Isaac Newton once said, truth is ever to be found in simplicity and not in the multiplicity and confusion of things. The way you learn to explain something simply is the same way you learn to play piano or golf. You practice. Start by explaining your research to your parents or your high school friends. Have conversations with people outside of your field. Help them to understand. Only by communicating clearly about scientific inquiry and the value of research will we be able to persuade people of the value of our results. No matter what school, college, department, institute, or research center you've been part of here at UW, I hope you've experienced that very Wisconsin thing, an extraordinary community of scholars collaborating across many different fields. I hope you'll stay connected to your friends and your colleagues here at UW and find opportunities to build new connections with people who can inspire you to keep learning and to building new skills. And I hope you will use your education to make the world just a little bit better. Thank you for being part of this community. Best wishes as you set off on the next stage of your journey. Wherever you go, be sure to come back and visit us every so often here in Madison and tell us how you're doing. Congratulations, and on Wisconsin. It is now my honor to introduce John Robert Behling, President of the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents. John Behling graduated from the University of Wisconsin River Falls with a bachelor's degree in political science and economics, and received his law degree at the University of Wisconsin Law School in Madison, which some of you know well. Regent President Behling is the first president from the Chippewa Valley area, where he's an attorney with the Eau Claire law firm of Weld Riley. He serves as the firm's president and chairs its government and administrative law practice. Regent President Behling's term on the Board of Regents is coming to a close, and I want to thank him for his service and for joining us here today. Please join me in welcoming Regent President John Behling.
Thank you, Chancellor Blank, for that very kind of introduction. And as always, it's great to be back on campus. On behalf of my Regent colleagues and UW System President, I offer to each of you graduates my sincere congratulations. Graduating with an advanced degree is an important milestone, and I know you all worked very, very hard to get here today. It seems like yesterday when I crossed the stage. It's been 20 years now. I know that I couldn't have crossed the stage without the love and support of my bride and my family. And I know that for every graduate out there, there's somebody special, whether it's a spouse, a family member, a friend, or a colleague that helped them get through to this important day. Graduates, with this in mind, let's give a round of applause again to that special person who helped us graduate. Thank you. Before I go any further, just a few words about the Board of Regents in the UW system. The UW system consists of over 170,000 students, 44,000 employees, and 26 campuses. It's one of the largest, most celebrated university and comprehensive institutions in the world. The UW system is truly one of the economic generators of the Midwest. The Board of Regents oversees the system. The regents, 18 of them, serve at the pleasure of the governor, appointed by the governor, and are confirmed by the Senate. We serve as volunteers. In the last 2 years, I've had the honor to serve as chairman of the board. Know that every day when I wake up in the last 24 months, I'm always amazed by the brilliance and the capabilities of our graduates. It's truly incredible. The Madison campus is the flagship for the University of Wisconsin. Every single Wisconsin resident is proud of what you graduates have accomplished today. No matter where you go throughout the world, no one can take it away from you, and it's a degree that's recognized worldwide with respect, and most importantly these days, integrity. One final point I'd like to make is the UW system has always believed, as I do, that we should benefit and learn from the past and think and train for the future. This philosophy of education and service, a cornerstone of the Wisconsin idea, helps define what we do both on campus and in the world. I think you'll agree that Steve Miller and Thomas Brock, our two honorary degree recipients who are here this evening, are excellent examples of the Wisconsin idea and great role models for all of us. In closing, I want you to know that the Board of Regents are very proud of our graduates. We're very proud of you and all of your achievements. Graduates, congratulations. Thank you for having me, and on Wisconsin.
Thank you, Regent President Behling. Today, we are privileged to have the honor of awarding UW-Madison honorary degrees. An honorary degree is earned not by completing a course of study, but by living an extraordinary life. Leanne Tigas, Professor of Community and Environmental Sociology and Chair of the Committee on Honorary Degrees, will read the degree citation for each honorary degree candidate.
Chancellor Blank, on recommendation of the faculty of the University of Wisconsin-Madison and by vote of the Board of Regents, I present these individuals for honorary degrees. I call upon Professor Thomas Givnish to bring forward Professor Emeritus Thomas Brock. The research of Thomas Brock, a professor of natural sciences here for 19 years, has challenged assumptions about the nature and resilience of life and helped create the field of biotechnology. In retirement, he is advancing the preservation and conservation of the Midwestern oak savanna, one of the most characteristic and endangered ecosystems of our area. The Brock's Pleasant Valley Conservancy property near Black Earth, Wisconsin, restored a particular Midwestern oak savanna and has become a training ground for the next generation of restoration ecologists. Chancellor Blank, on the recommendation of the faculty and by vote of the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, I present Thomas Brock to receive the degree Honorary Doctor of Science.
Thomas Brock. We're not there yet. Thomas Brock, in recognition of the contributions to microbiology with your discoverer of Thermus aquaticus, which led to the creation of whole new fields of biology, and for modeling the best in ecological preservation through your work in conserving Midwestern oak savannas, the University of Wisconsin-Madison confers upon you the degree Honorary Doctor of Science. Congratulations. This is yours.
Thank you so much. Chancellor Blank, Professor Givnish, members of the administration, other colleagues who nominated me for this honor, fellow recipient, my wife Kathy, and family. I was born in Ohio and graduated from high school in 1944 at the height of the World War II, just before D-Day. I enlisted in the U.S. Navy and spent 2 years in training in the Chicago area, mostly at Great Lakes and Navy Pier. I soon discovered Wisconsin as a place to go for my liberties, and on weekends I would come to either Milwaukee or Madison. The U.S. Navy had taken over a lot of facilities at UW, including Adams and Tripp dorms, where there was a radio school. A friend of mine was in radio school here, so I hitchhiked up one weekend to visit him. And after eating dinner, he walked me down to the Union along the Lakeshore Path. Who couldn't like UW after that? After discharge from the Navy, with the GI Bill, I applied to the University of Wisconsin for admission. I was informed that because of the overcrowded condition after the war, they were only accepting Wisconsin residents. That was how I ended up at Ohio State, where I received a bachelor's and master's degree in botany and a PhD in microbiology. Who knows how a career is going to develop once you graduate? After several research jobs, I ended up as a full professor at Indiana University and assumed that I would spend the rest of my academic career in Bloomington. Then came the fateful telephone call, April 1971, from UW-Madison, offering me a research professorship, the E.B. Fred Professor of Natural Sciences. What a surprise. What a great opportunity. Although I was never able to be a student at UW, I was going to be a faculty member. I thought it was kind of a fitting end to my career. Kathy and I bought a house in Sherwood Hills, and I walked that lakeshore path to work every day after, either walked or biked. Later on, after I retired, Kathy and I were able to help in a fairly significant way in getting the lakeshore path, picnic point, and all the other greater than 300 acres of natural area along the campus, what is now called the Lakeshore Nature Preserve. E.B. Fred, for whom my professorship was named, was a bacteriologist who became dean of the College of Agriculture, and then right after World War II, the president of the university. He was 1945 to 1958. Very important years for UW right after the war. Made extremely important contribution. One of Dr. Fred's major accomplishments was convincing the state to give money to build Memorial Library. He was the most proud of the fact that he was able to get the library. Before that, believe it or not, all the UW books were in the Historical Society. Kathy and I got to know Dr. Fred fairly well because my professorship was named for him. He was an emeritus professor and for many years lived in that house at 10 North Babcock, which is right in the middle of where a lot of the Lakeshore dorms are, and right next to the Allen Centennial Garden. The house is still standing there. We frequently, Kathy and I frequently visited Dr. Fred and Rosa, his wife, bringing our kids along. And Rosa Fred loved the kids and let them have the run of the house. Dr. Fred had a very large collection of toy pigs, which he let our kids play with. And my son Brian, who's here tonight, remembers playing with those pigs. As a research professor, I was free to work on whatever I wanted. And important to think of basic research. Some people called it useless because it had no practical aims. But I think the evidence is that basic research is what practical aims build on. For instance, what use could there be in looking for living bacteria in the hot pools and geysers of Yellowstone National Park? But sometimes a basic discovery can lead to very wide applications. Through my Yellowstone research, I discovered a vast new range of life forms. One of these was a thermophilic bacterium that I named Thermus aquaticus, which is the source of the enzyme Tac DNA polymerase. This enzyme turned out to be one of the most important enzymes in the world, making PCR and DNA research, modern DNA research, possible. With vast applications in biology, medicine, forensics, anthropology, archaeology, genealogy, indeed, human society as a whole. Look it up in Wikipedia. After retiring from UW-Madison, I returned to my first love in botany, and Kathy and I have spent the last 25 years restoring a natural area in western Dane County called Pleasant Valley Conservancy. Among other habitats, Pleasant Valley has a substantial oak savanna. Oak savannas were one time the most common habitat form in southern Wisconsin, but are now extremely rare. Wisconsin DNR classifies the oak savanna as globally, I always have trouble with that word, globally imperiled. You got it out. Pleasant Valley Conservancy is now a state natural area open to the public and attracts naturalists, bird watchers, prairie enthusiasts, all sorts of artists and photographers, and a lot of university courses, as it helps to demonstrate what southern Wisconsin looked like before it was settled. Thanks for listening, and good luck.
Steve Miller. The Steve Miller Band has been performing for more than 50 years, to fresh accolades with each show and recording. The band's skillful musicianship charms both longtime and new fans. Steve Miller himself continues to inspire and further the reach of traditional American blues and rock and roll music. He has also redefined the role musicians can take in protecting their work and has proven himself an admired mentor and teacher to younger musicians. Chancellor Blank, on the recommendation of the faculty and by vote of the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, I present Stephen Haworth Miller to receive the degree Honorary Doctor of Humane Letters.
Stephen Miller, in recognition of your lasting influence on American music, particularly blues and rock, and your skill in mentoring musicians, the University of Wisconsin in Madison confers upon you the degree of Honorary Doctor of Humane Letters. Congratulations. That's yours.
I think you all should know that the people on the dais can't understand a word that's being said. It's the strangest thing. The acoustics in here are, I guess, for basketball. I had to say that, I'm sorry. So I want to thank everyone here for bestowing this honor on me. I came here 58 years ago. I was a 17-year-old kid. I was green as grass. And I joined a class of 7,500 freshmen. And we were in a time when the world was just going to completely change. And it feels like the same time now. No one knew what was going to happen, and I had so many things happen to me here that I wasn't expecting. I joined SNCC. I became a freedom rider. I became an advocate for peace. I became very political, and my whole life changed. And the culture here at this university imprinted all of that on who I am today. It's part of what my music is and what I do. And as I sit here and I look at all of you educators who work so hard, and it's such a special group of people in this room right now. So much work has been done. I find that we're really all the same. I left school, I jumped off the edge into the unknown and started writing songs. I had no idea what was going to happen to me, but I believed in it, and I learned the skills. I want to thank my teachers here for making me study creative writing and comparative literature and political science. I found that all of that made a huge difference. And as I sit here and I listen to everyone talk about what their experience has been, maybe you're a nuclear scientist, a biochemist, a physician, or a musician. We all go out into the world and we all try and make a difference. And the thing that I learned really early, once I got outside of the home, the surrounding, the loving arms of the university, was you have to be great instantly. You got to get right on it and go right to it. And that's what I've tried to do all my life. And this summer I'll go out and do 40 shows, and I'll play to 500,000 people, and I'll write some new songs, and I'll carry this honor with me for the rest of my life. I love the university. I love this gathering right here. All of the hard work that it takes just to get to here. And then you take it outside of the university and you take it into the world. So God bless you all for all the work. God bless the University of Wisconsin. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'll wear this robe with honor. Thank you.
Congratulations again to both of our honorary degree recipients. It is my pleasure at this point to introduce Professor Michael Leckrone and members of the University's School of Music Band, who will play our musical selection this evening, Songs to Thee, Wisconsin, arranged by Professor Leckrone. This is, as many of you know, a somewhat bittersweet moment for us. Mike is stepping down after 50 years as director of the UW-Madison Marching Band, and this will be one of the last times that he leads the band. Please join me in thanking a gifted teacher and composer and legendary showman who will forever be part of this university, Professor Michael Leckrone. This year, we commemorate an historic moment for female graduates on our campus, and we're reminded of all the incredible and accomplished women who've called this university home. Our next speaker, Cora Merritt, is one of those remarkable women. Dr. Merritt earned a master's degree and a PhD in sociology from UW-Madison, then later served on our faculty for 20 years. She published widely in the field of sociology while serving in a host of professional and public positions, including a long and distinguished association with the National Science Foundation. Most recently, she was NSF's Deputy Director, serving until 2014. Under her leadership, the foundation increased its efforts to broaden representation in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This coming fall, I'm very pleased to announce that Dr. Merritt has agreed to return to campus to teach a class on the Wisconsin ideal, past and present. Please help me to welcome Dr. Cora Merritt.
Thank you so much, Chancellor Blank. I have been called a trailblazer, but do my efforts to broaden boundaries in science, integrate fields of knowledge, and cultivate diversity, do these efforts merit me the badge trailblazer? Not if the term, as often defined, depicts someone who rids trails of poisonous growth or clears wild, barbarous creatures from paths. But if trailblazing signals efforts to widen pathways and diversify path takers, then I embrace the moniker. Key challenges in the contemporary world call for advances in science, for systematic analyses on life, the physical universe, behavior, and the entities that people create. The imperative is for inclusion of fields of knowledge, and for all of human talent. The lessons I have learned about the benefits of and potential from inclusion derive from varied experiences, such as service on the Presidential Commission that investigated the nuclear power accident in Pennsylvania, extended years on the board of the Argonne National Laboratory, a Department of Energy operation, engagement with the Social Science Research Council, and countless other roles. At some point, I moved from being an observer and student of the scientific enterprise to someone seeking to affect that enterprise. My activities had illustrated for me just how critical for science is breadth of content and of participation. My years at the National Science Foundation were especially pivotal as I embraced its charge being to promote the progress of science and advance national health, prosperity, and welfare. The transition to commitment resulted from exchanges I had, exchanges that the Russell Sage Foundation enabled. Nor can I overlook what I garnered from the National Research Council, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and other affiliations. Persons labeled as trailblazers typically do not set out to change the world. Rather, it is discontent with existing options alongside a vision of possibilities from which action springs. This is how I imagine the situation of the first women graduates from the University of Wisconsin. Just possibly, the 6 who completed their degrees 150 years ago regarded the constraints of the day as unacceptable. The university had admitted men, I'm very sorry. It had admitted men from its founding in 1848, but not women. In 1867, it created a separate female college through which women could take a limited set of courses. President Paul Chadbourne had approved this arrangement, for he was certain that co-education would distract and impede the progress of male students. 1 year later, the Regent disbanded the female college and admitted women into the larger university. Significantly, the change occurred for white women, but not for others. It was 1918 before the first woman of color graduated from the university. Inclusionary efforts, then, do not inevitably reach across all boundaries. Obstacles to inclusion remain, but can we not draw inspiration from the pioneering spirit that prompted the continued quest for removing obstacles? Does not a dedication to trailblazing appear time and again in the annals of this university? Plaques on the campus and elsewhere record the memorable words that President Charles Van Hise issued in 1905. Those words, "I shall never be content until the beneficent influence of the university reaches every family in the state." Faculty, staff, students, and others have embraced and enlarged the mantra, striving to have the university work to benefit the larger nation and indeed the world. I cherish my affiliation with an institution where the dedication to inclusion is long-standing and the pursuit of it perseveres. And I am confident that the trailblazers who brought us to where we are today, 150 years after women first received University of Wisconsin degrees, would be proud to see what all of you are path makers. They would be proud to know that you are the path makers. You've already made the mark and will continue to strive. Thank you for your engagement with this university.
Ever wonder what puts the W in UW? Why women, of course.
We're celebrating UW Women at 150.
Imagine Wisconsin 150 years ago. It was 1863, the height of the American Civil War. The fledgling University of Wisconsin had lost much of its male population to the battlefield. The times were right to admit women.
Such a great start. Except women were later put into separate classes in the female college.
By 1869, the first group of trailblazers was ready to graduate. We know they became a lawyer, a high school principal, and a prominent suffragist who worked with Susan B. Anthony.
But before commencement, there was a holdup. President Chadbourne scoffed at the idea of conferring bachelor's degrees to women.
Did you ever wonder why it's called a bachelor's degree in the first place?
Fortunately, the Board of Regents decided that women should receive the same degree as men.
They also decided to honor President Chadbourne by naming a building after him, the first all-women dormitory, Chadbourne Hall.
Women officially received full coeducational status in 1874 and began taking classes with men.
They started working in biology labs and studying geology. At last, women had their chance to delve into science.
One of our alumni became the first woman geologist in the United States, Florence Bascom, daughter of former UW President John Bascom.
The work of another alumna, bacteriologist Alice Evans, led to one of the most important advances in public health in the 20th century, pasteurized milk.
At the UW, women in science were here to stay.
The first known African-American woman graduated from the UW in 1918.
Mabel Watson Ramey was fired from her first job as a teacher because she was black. She went on to become the state's first female African-American lawyer.
Soon, other UW women followed in her footsteps.
Women like Vel Phillips, the first African-American woman to graduate from the UW Law School, and the first woman and African-American to be elected to Milwaukee's Common Council.
Phillips championed fair housing and civil rights and went on to become Milwaukee's first female judge and Wisconsin's first African-American judge. We named a residence hall after her.
In every aspect of the collegiate experience, UW women excelled. They proved their strength in physical education and showed their aptitude for 3D design.
Women participated in sports like basketball as early as 1900.
All across campus, women pursued their passions.
They didn't hold back on having fun and still don't.
But UW women also took life seriously. In the Army Nurse Corps during World War II, Signe Scott Cooper saw that nurses were much more than physicians' handmaidens. She devoted 60 years to nursing education at UW and supported a 21st century vision for the School of Nursing.
The theater was the stage for a different battle, civil rights.
Alumna Lorraine Hansberry's award-winning drama, A Raisin in the Sun, became the first play by an African-American woman to be produced on Broadway.
In the arts, UW women transformed modern dance.
Margaret Dobler founded the first academic dance department in the nation.
Zona Gale was the first woman to receive the Pulitzer Prize for Drama.
Gerda Lerner founded the nation's first graduate program in women's history.
Ada Deer was the first woman to lead a tribal nation and the Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs.
The first female drum major in the Big Ten was UW's Dee Willems.
The first woman and youngest person to head a Big Ten University police force, Sue Rising.
The first female chancellor in the Big Ten, UW-Madison's Donna Shalala. Biddy Martin was UW's second female chancellor, and now, me.
There are so many more firsts for UW women.
And when it comes to national championship teams,
Badger women win!
Looking back, we realize how far UW women have come in 150 years. Where will you go next?
forward and on Wisconsin.
I love that video. We are now at the point to confer degrees, and I call upon William Karpus, Dean of the Graduate School.
Candidates for the degrees Doctor of Philosophy, Doctor of Musical Arts, and Master of Fine Arts will please rise. Chancellor Blank.
Dean Karpus.
These scholars have devoted significant time to graduate study and research. In addition, they have defended theses or presented exhibitions that have been accepted by faculty committees as substantial contributions, signifying scholarly or professional achievement in their respective fields. They are presented for the highest academic recognition in their fields given by the university, the degree Doctor of Philosophy, Doctor of Musical Arts, or Master of Fine Arts.
On the recommendation of the faculty of the Graduate School and under the authority granted by the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, I confer on you the degree Doctor of Philosophy, Doctor of Musical Arts, or Master of Fine Arts. In testimony thereof, you will receive your degrees. Candidates will please be seated until the marshals instruct you towards the platform. Congratulations.
Hao Su, Shawu Dai, Iwa Zhu, Peter Newhouse IX, Katerina Gonzalez Rivera, Liz Garcia Peterson, Charlotte Minty, Ross Litke, Wesley Dunnigan, Xiao Fung, Huthafa Fly, Adriana Golding, Jeanette Metzger, Alejandra Castellanos, Ryoko Imamura, Susie Wuyong Choi, Yi-Jen Chen, Jake Malloy, Juan Carlos Medina, Jeffrey Flagg, Veronica Estala Gutierrez, Ling Xin Kong, Ho Jae Lee, Shalaka Burlawar, Shel Chen Xian, Bin Guo, Min Tian, Emily A. Pop, Dakota Mace, Larissa Kangusu, Carolina Ferreira, Minsu Ju, Nels Grushner, Timothy Pullum, Haili Wu, Kyle Bunkers, Justin Walker, Zachary Williams, Philip Bonofiglo, Quinn Sorensen, Janjira Sisawang, Ziyun Zhu, Rachel Boothby, Kate Werson, Andrew Davey, Rebecca Summer, Spring Greeny, Minhao Zheng, Zhang Chuan Li, Regina Wagner, David Lawson, Nikoyo Edo Eket, Aaron Ingle, Teresa Grenewalt, Adela Sadillo, Jan Essam, Megan Stanton, William Shattuck, Sean Stout, Joshua Ostrander, Caitlin Ostrander, Gonzalo Contador, Yilin Zhang, Xing Yu Pen, Yihao Xiang, Ximeng Du, James Romero Masters, Charles Mastrasik, Vimul Desai, Eric Simile, Natalie Viscarello, Leonard Che Fru, Andy Schroedermeyer, Noreen Sarah Fatima, Yoon Hyuk Ro, Jia Yu, Jared Martin, Jeff Tischhauser, Caitlin Seaslick Miskimen, Ian Waters, Kevin Musgrave, Samantha Matachi, Annalisa Kashani, Matteo Billeri, Ayashi Rajiv, Colin Boyle, Angela Montpas, Carly Hochstatter, Jiarung Wu, Seth McElhaney, Ying Shi, Nathaniel Egan, Siddharth Krishna, Sarah Specht, Alexander Antelak, Sarah Strand, Casey Rich, Sandeep Kindo, Shangjuan Yu, Kenneth Long, Logan Willie, James Burbo, Matthew Meehan, Matthew Sutton, Brittany Nicole Kreckler, Tanvi Tucker, Ishanti Gangopadhyay, Miliana Buak, Adam Fries, Yuan Chi Yang, Vikram Prema Kumar, Jody Hair Painter, Lauren Glover, Xun Yu Meng, Fu Tan, Shanku Zhao, Dennis McQueenie, Guru Sabramani, Rachel Silver, Ellen Hebden, Ryan Knipple, Ching Ho, Kirsten Morning, Nadia Khan, Hai Liu, Sophia Farmer, Ann Glasscock, Mark Summers, Larissa Doroshenko, Emily Leahy Howell, Karen Ann Spadier, Anna Hannah Jordan Douglas, Angela Beth Samsorn, Christine McWilliams, Madeline Lesperance, Charles Wiesa, Carolyn Leeson, Emily Parrott, Diana Kupisk, Samuel Acuna, Amy Schultz, Catherine Hatchell, Carolyn Voter, Andrew Voter, Ashley McCrown, Young Shu, Wunku Lee, Sarah Gio, Andrew Salyer, Glenn Thurston, Jill Chipman, Yuheng Wang, Madeline Ball, Juan Venegas, Emily Braun, Diamond Alexis Howell, Andrea Cudworth, Evan Patrick Sheehan, Nikolai Rodzinski, Diego Casanova, Brianna Smart, Gandhari Wattle, Piotr Puhalski, Vanessa Linka, Yunshan Dai, Brett Hoffman, Yiher Mar, Eli Moll, Alvaro Linares, Deepa Acharya, Powell Zibzinski, Ka Yang, Jillian Johnson, Xiaofang Zhong, Yu Feng, Xin Wen Zhao, Caitlin Keller, Yatu Shi, Benjamin Taylor Shannon, Sally Peywin Wu, Christian Geske, Daniel Adams, Ryan Morrison, Prakacharati Satsut, Janelle Yuyi, Lana Magoob, Andrea Lupash, Benjamin Burns, Kyle Helzer, Radhika Gosavi, Indro Ghosh, Gulpreet Kaura, Brianna Wilkin Ressman, Gitika Nera, Kelly Mittock, Christy Walker, Nadira Shabazz, Rachel Fensky, Preston Atwood, Angela Zito, Nicholas Benson, Reina El Disoki, Jeffrey Ballard, David Schreier, Yangdong Fang Yang, Stephen Pierce, Liza Shang, Helen Williams, Walatasiun Mesquita, Kelly Jung, David Bevel, Claire Barrett, Giayong Jin, Yusuf Al-Harbi, Kenna Degner, Jessica Vasquez, Sandrine Pell, Ariel Garcia, Joseph McAllis, Caitlin Gold, Marion Bolton, Thomas Allen Rush, Joseph Sanford, Kyung-hoon Lee, Kwan Johnson, Francesco Carati, Victor Jauffet, Michelle Pearson, Adam Bolton, Lorraine Rodriguez Bonilla, June Hare, Adalbert Gerald Susai Raj, Zev Weiss, Liana Dang, Elizabeth Kiernan, Andrew Santoso, Nireved Meshram, Benjamin Miller, Matthew Worth, Ryan Behrens, Gavin Jones, Philip Manlick, Lauren Surth, Angela Guarin, Lisa Klein-Vogel, Yingxun Lin, Emma Colley Monahan, Ray Lee, Soyeon Bae, Omer Sadik, Laura Sangrola, Brittany Otamailoi, Teresa Special Embe, Catherine Robadek, Isaac Garcia Guerrero, Joshua Martin, Sai Harisha Rajanala, Somya Acharya, Annie McInich, Frederick Baim, Alam Alaani, Shiwei Sao, Kazim Sanuth, Moira Essen, Typhon Soysal, Matthew Taylor, Philip J. Bostick, Shannon Lou Roper Anderson, Jessica Mullenbeck, Jeremiah Yee, Emmanuel Vasquez Rivera, Lei Zheng, Atia Gonzalez Ben, Jared Hendrickson, Marcos Colon, Teresa Maria Watts, Hao Tsian Wong, Dan Chong, Yu Hyun Park, Yen Ming Huang, Chang Yu Sun, Wenjie Lee, James Pine, Madeline Pape, Maggie Sampacloak, Christopher Spar, Yin Yin Xu, Liu Liu, Chu Kuo Ma Equilum, Satya Money, Giselle Martinez Negrete, Brendan George, Luke Odell, David Abel, Yutung Jin, Bifan Chen, Carrie Hughes, Jamila Lee Johnson, Jiwei Liu, Zhen Di, Unji Cho, Luis Reyes Rojas, Isabel Rojas. Diana Guzman Colon. Dean Sanders. Sun Q Yi. Zhu Wang. Yi Xuan Tan. Junhua Li. Hui Long Zhang. Omar Orens Rojas. Ricardo Rivera Tirado. Mustafa Ozcam. Antonio Reyes. Wanika Jones. Alexandra Kriovsky Manella. Rachel Edith Kesselmeyer. Rachel Hamilton. Brian Lightsky. Tyler Titcomb. Leanne Chin. Adrian Cheng. Daniel Hinton. Matthew Dent. Madeline Beasley. Candice J.E. Widensee. Shell Brown, Rochelle Lee Brown. Gautam Prakrika. Dong Ho Lee. To Bin Shuka. Saja Lee. Hong Jin Jun. Yuki He. Jin Krao Zhu. John Ifatikar. Hyung Jun Park. Junhee Zhang. Elena Reinisch. Seung Yo Lee. Meena Siamkumar. Adam Denny. Megan Woodbury Bellotti. Danny Minhanen. Michael Crosley. Gwendolyn Baxley. Chansu Ha. Shen Lee. Amitha Damal Pali. Andrew Schmigi. Megan Bylon. Anna Hunt Golden. Gekhong Yao. Ade Shikova. Mukshuan Liang. Yan Yao Yi. Ting Ye. Emma Su. Yuan Li. Efe Liu. Jiansheng Hu. Young-Eun Kim. Neil Klingensmith. Elizabeth Grace Sepperly. Huran Liu. Sarah J. Stanky. Alexander James Donnelly. Taylor Rushing. Anna Lenner. Glorianne Langva. Adriana Barrios. Sung Che Huang. Chloe Dark. Michael Mishkin. Dmitry Yetazenko. Michelle Cooley. Hans Klopp. Rebecca Bettel. Kabel Mishka Legat. Christopher Greggs. Alexis Siru. Emily Sheltler. Rebecca Hewitt. Wesley Holterman. Mark Bridges. Ross Kleiman. Desiree Desierto. Jessica Su. Pacha Chaikin Mongkon. Mainek Mustafi, Anurag Agrawal,
I now call upon Robert Golden, Dean of the School of Medicine and Public Health.
Candidates for the degrees: Doctors of Medicine, Doctor of Physical Therapy, Master of Genetic Counselor Studies, Master of Physician Assistant Studies, and Master of Public Health will please rise. Chancellor Blank.
Dean Golden.
These scholars have successfully completed the requirements of the courses of study in medicine, physical therapy, genetics counseling, physician assistant studies, or public health. Upon the recommendation of the faculty of the School of Medicine and Public Health, I present these candidates for degrees.
On the recommendation of the faculty of the School of Medicine and Public Health, and under the authority granted by the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Medicine, Doctor of Physical Therapy, Master of Genetic Counselor Studies, Master of Physician Assistant Studies, or Master of Public Health. In testimony thereof, you will receive your diplomas. Please proceed to the podium as directed.
Brian Kroll, Atavi Jivananthan, Ashok Vatirai, Arzu Monowar, Sarah Larson Wernberg, Max Russick, Jordan Johnson, Nicole Fenimore, Shah Rose Rahman, Sam Bauer, Jason Vanru, Konhen Tran, Evan Goyet, Matthew Lee, Spencer Klein, Colin Millar, Elisa Tremarco Preble, Anthony Bowie, Jason Brown, Alyssa Small, Danielle Hartwig, Natalie Guerrero Konfi, Anna Barker, Sadiq Akrum, Zishan Yakub, Margaret Ann Kaiser, Mackenzie Bruce, Nicole Altman, Mary Kathleen Finta, Bridget K. Klomsky, Jennifer Collins, Emma Fenner, Brandon Hernandez, Logan Wills, Daniel Jones, Jessica, Hamis Walker, Liz Hovel, Jordan Baumann, Dylan Lawrence, Daniel Rim, Alan Fan, Brittany McAdams, Chi Nu Vane, Annie Stump, Juki Friedman, Cassidy Tierney, Maria Rozo, Eric Moffitt, Kristen Ann Hildebrandt, Sarah Weiss, Tabitha Tate, Willem Schott, Casey Frymiller, Tyler Greno, Garrett Donaldson, Mitch Bierman, Dansei Tenzin, Benjamin Griddick, Bruce Lee, Andrew Van Pay, Blake Weber, Joseph Mueller, Ryan Burrs, Michael Turek, Christopher Scott, Eric Rojo, Kevin Glom, Spencer Cleland, Konfi Fonsok, Ji Won Lee, Elvira Wallow, Sarah Schuett, Kirsten Frambam, Rachel Azenleko Akwet, Alexandria Molnar, Samantha Eisen, Katie Brow, Austin Gerdis, Mitchell Arnold, Kimberly Cassander, Ryan Rohde, Brandon Fraley, Caitlin Shaughnessy, Carolyn Bogart, Taylor Vinhall, Olivia Westhoff, Christopher Wampole, Joshua Militzer, Matthew Pahaklerk, Ashley Emery, Jennifer Sharonbrock, Billy Brudgink, Stephen Sawyer, Benjamin Davis, Benjamin Wales, Brett Pozolinski, Matthew Kaster, Sean Bowler, Kylie Reese, Daniel Pallas Magar, Samantha Barber Gallo, William Bussey, Alex Egan, Mitch Phillips, Morgan Yeska, Megan Tansil, Bailey Lunzer, Jared Hutter, David Drum, Drew Haley, Lauren Callan, Jennifer Josephine Blunt, Jasleen Guru, Emily Durham, Jesse Olson, Samuel Norton, Nicole Kaiser, Ellen Humbertson, Callie Gordon, Abigail Alft, Natalita Chapman Place, Rebecca Hunsley, Virginia Rose Winterly, Brooke Morrison, Martin Medina, Carrie Keenan, Amanda Lorghay, Michaela Pearson, Dakota White, Kayla Colbert, Marlena Ortlieb, Porter Pavalko, Alyssa Olson, CJ Christian, Corey Smid,
I now call upon Diana Hess, Dean of the School of Education.
Candidates for the degree Doctor of Occupational Therapy will please rise. Chancellor Blank.
Dean Hess.
These scholars have successfully completed the requirements of the course of study in occupational therapy. Upon the recommendation of the faculty of the School of Education, I present these candidates for degrees.
On the recommendation of the faculty of the School of Education and under the authority granted by the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, I confer on you the degree Doctor of Occupational Therapy. In testimony thereof, you will receive your degrees. Please be seated. I now call upon Carl Scholes, Dean of the College of Letters and Science.
Will the candidate for the degree of Doctor of Audiology please rise? Chancellor Blank.
Dean Schultz.
These scholars have successfully completed the requirements of the course of study in audiology. Upon the recommendation of the faculty of the College of Letters and Science, I present these candidates for degrees.
On the recommendation of the faculty of the College of Letters and Science and under the authority granted by the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Audiology. In testimony thereof, you will receive your diplomas. Please be seated. I now call upon Linda Scott, Dean of the School of Nursing.
Candidates for the degree of Doctor of Nursing Practice will please rise. Chancellor Blank.
Dean Scott.
These scholars have successfully completed the requirements of the course of study in nursing practice. Upon the recommendation of the faculty of the School of Nursing, I present these candidates for degrees.
On the recommendation of the faculty of the School of Nursing and under the authority granted by the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Nursing Practice. In testimony thereof, you will receive your diplomas. Candidates, please be seated. I now call upon Steve Swanson, Dean of the School of Pharmacy.
Candidates for the degree of Doctor of Pharmacy will please rise. Chancellor Blank.
Dean Swanson.
These scholars have successfully completed the requirements of the course of study in pharmacy. Upon the recommendation of the faculty of the School of Pharmacy, I present these candidates for degrees.
On the recommendation of the faculty of the School of Pharmacy and under the authority granted by the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, I confer on you the degree Doctor of Pharmacy. In testimony thereof, you will receive your diplomas. Please be seated. I now call upon Mark Markell, Dean of the School of Veterinary Medicine.
Candidates for the degree of Doctor of Veterinary Medicine and Master of Science, Comparative Biomedical Sciences will please rise. Chancellor Blank.
Dean Markell.
These scholars have successfully completed the requirements of the courses of study in veterinary medicine and comparative biomedical sciences. Upon the recommendation of the faculty of the School of Veterinary Medicine, I present these candidates for degrees.
On the recommendation of the faculty of the School of Veterinary Medicine and under the authority granted by the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, I confer on you the degree Doctor of Veterinary Medicine or Master of Science, Comparative Biological Sciences. In testimony thereof, you will receive your degrees. Please be seated until the marshals instruct you to proceed, and congratulations to all.
School of Pharmacy. Christine Garmo. Sydney Steiner. Alana Ambrosius. Rachel Dici. Taylor Kitsky. Sarah Pupkis. Stephanie Winkers. Allison Behrens. Sarah Lopina. Nicholas Karaski. Brad Hettick. Jeremy Kosak. Benton Malloy Polovena. Logan Osnes. John Harter. Michael Konetsko. Richard Strasser. Eric Poticus. Callie Grassinger. Krista Erickson. Tina Chen. Jennifer Fleeg. Tyler Liu. Robert Hito. Adrian Lowe. Kate Berlin. Nikki Pashulk. Jordan Anderson. Kristen Trout. Tarina Rutitus. Emily Fong. Dawn Schoen. Bradley Mayer. Brianna Cardinale. Carissa Fritsch. Nicole Weinferter. Brock Dantuma. Adam Robb. Colin Dean. Joseph Higgins. Jessica Blatzer. Aaron Sackett. Ryan Simonet. Joshua Knockreiner. Matthew Hoopert. Meredith Fry. Saria Zhuang. Po Yamufu Yang. Bianca Bellissimo. Joanna Adaminsky. Macy Porlier. Lauren Cartledge. Marnie Jansen. Beatrice Jimenez Cadea. Erin Lee. Melissa Durst. Sarah Misselhorn. Michael Fantle. Brian Kasmer. Judy Leatham. Eric Mui. Yuki Zane. Amanda Carrolls. Danielle Hudson. Eric Koski. John Rutsch. Brianna Bloom. Jacob Haas. School of Nursing. Jillian Marie Bosson. Stephanie Lynn Ropel. Mara Stewart. College of Letters and Science. Jamie Herskovitz. Ruthie White. Samantha Hellman. Christine McGinty. Samantha Panning. Emily Fisher. School of Education. Julia Coleman. Ann Millard. Laura Schaefer. School of Veterinary Medicine. Nathaniel Steinert. Ashwara Ayer Basker. Claire Offlerbach. Amber Grisarek. Gayla Federley. Sandra Pumper. Matthew Shear. Cole Anderson. Abigail Ball. Marie Kettler. Deanna Lynn Scheller. Hannah Marie Mortensen. Candace Ray Hosel. Tyler Mack. Anthony Barnstable. Daniel Chia. Jessica Gasca. Rachel O'Leary. Andrea McGowan. Susanna Novak. Jenna Newman. Megan Gallagher. Jordan Laskey. Kaylin Gertz. Hyojin Dong. Stephanie Newhouse. Mariola Bataya Rock. Diamond Taylor. Nicole Neitz-Lisbach. Sarah Rossmiller. Ashley Wing. Stephanie Kurth. Alexandra Harvey. Megan Thiessen. Joanna Finstad. Lauren Wieringa. Jenna Motes. Rachel Mickman, Kendra Hodge, Lauren Sprague, Brandon Cross, Candace Lean, Tiffany Turinsky, Kara Radzinski, Rachel Falsey, Jenna Epstein, Mason Thomas Sari, Ian McSweeney, Caitlin Jones, Taylor Opgenorth, Allison Stillen, Luke DeFreitas, Mitchell Thomas, Morgan Randall, Galen Walter Heine, Cal Melberg, Jacob Peter Nillis, Jeffrey Genie, Emily Lockhard, Danielle Hart, Bailey Stahl, Katie Dubiak, Emily Gavick, Hannah Terhar, Emily Oland.
Congratulations to all of our graduates. Thank you to family members and friends whose support and encouragement made this day possible. Good luck to every single one of you, and on Wisconsin. To conclude our celebration, please join Professor LaCrone and the University School of Music Band in singing Varsity. All got to stand up for this.